Welcome along to the Make It Count podcast. My name is David.
My name's Matt.
And we are the Taylor Bros.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Still.
So today we're going to talk about an article I read and a little bit about how that might apply to the world, right?
Yep.
You've read it.
Indeed.
What do you remember about it?
I thought it was very, very fascinating. It's called something about the Luddites.
Yeah, the title is What the Luddites Can Teach Us About Artificial Intelligence.
Wow.
Okay.
What can they teach us about artificial intelligence, David?
What do you remember about Luddites, if anything?
Well, having read the article, I remember a little bit more than I did before. I suppose before, I just had this sense that they were against technology.
Yeah, anti-technology is used as a bit of an insult. And this article explores that. And basically, the Luddites originally were English textile workers at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Wow.
And they broke into factories and destroyed machinery.
Yeah.
And they're seen as like the antithesis of progress.
Indeed.
But several people have looked back and said they've been given a bad rap. And that isn't the whole story of what happened. So Brian Merchant, who's a different person,
Maybe brother of Simon.
He wrote a new book called Blood in the Machine, where he's exploring this and basically says that these highly skilled English textile workers, for first thing, they prior warned the factory owners that they were going to destroy this. But they also said that factory owners, 19th century factory owners, made a choice not to use technology to assist their highly qualified workers, but to undermine them so that they would use these much bigger scale factories to basically drive wages down, lower the
quality and cost. Yeah.
And so it increased their output, but actually it was bad for workers. And that's what the Luddites said, is that you've presented this as an inevitability, but actually you've made a choice to depress wages.
Yeah. And to devalue skilled workers.
Yeah.
So these Luddites weren't just manual labourers that we maybe think of in the Industrial Revolution who just had, that's what the factory owners wanted. But these people had been effectively artisans of their trade, crafting, apprenticed for years and decades and becoming, I think the technical term is a journeyman maybe of a trade, becoming that level of quality and care and selling your goods for a good price. But this is again, their from the article, their contention with what was happening wasn't technology was coming in to help everything in better. It was you're driving out the best quality, replacing them with low quality, underpaid, effectively low pay, underskilled workers.
Child labour. Yeah, I
mean, that's a good point. And therefore you're able to still make a massive profit because you're just producing tons and tons of low quality fabric. It doesn't matter that it's low quality because you've always got more coming. And in a sense, that might even be the beginnings of a step along the way of what we see today, especially in the fashion industry, fast fashion, designed obsolescence, this thing of it doesn't really matter that your thing breaks after a year or breaks very soon because we've got another one that's just as cheap and you can buy it. And so the client sees endless cheap products. It doesn't really matter that it lasts not very long. But of course, we devalue everyone in that chain of production.
So at the moment, most of the world would look at them and go, Luddites are anti-technology, they're anti-progress, they don't want this. Where actually, in their own words, they would say the factory owners made choices that created a much bigger wealth inequality. But that was a choice, not an inevitability as it's been proposed. Why is that book relevant now? We just become the history podcast? No, we haven't. Brian Merchant, he basically says this is similar to what's happening with AI at the moment.
Yes.
That we've seen this in the art world where suddenly AI can generate art and movie scripts. Generate, well, indeed. And writers are not necessarily worried that it's going to produce the next great film script. But that instead, and we've apparently already seen this from producers, is they'll put a script into some AI software, it'll create it, and then they send it to the writer to rewrite it.
Yeah.
Which means the writer doesn't have full ownership rights over it. They're just involved in the rewrite.
And they may be paid as a copy editor or something.
Yeah, they get paid less. Their art is undermined. And so instead of using AI to create more equality, it's been used as a bargaining against writers. It's a chip of which to depress their wages. And that's why this conversation, and that's why Brian Merchant basically says the Luddites have never been more relevant than now.
Yeah.
Because again, this choice is coming up. And so it was just a really interesting way of framing it, that actually we could make choices that bring equality or more a closer equality. Instead, oftentimes it seems like, and he talks about the ruling class, make choices that create a further wealth inequality.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, especially in light of some of the other books. Well, the other book I read recently, The Life We're Looking For by Andy Crouch, and he talks very much about this thing of technology and the drive that we have for technology actually is often used as a tool just purely for wealth and growth of wealth creation. Doesn't necessarily mean the benefit and the flourishing of persons, of people, and how it can dehumanize all of us involved in it. And where you have some people making these grand claims that we've overcome war, plague and famine, that actually those things are very much still with us. But our response to those who are suffering wealth, plague and famine very much tells us something about our humanity. And I think that's, in a sense, without trying to overblow it too much, we are in a space where lots of people are going, what does it mean to be human? I mean, that's a question that's been going for thousands of years anyway, but in the light of artificial intelligence, where we have machines which can produce stuff that looks like intelligence to us. And I think that's, again, some of the stuff I've read. It's very important to remember the A in artificial intelligence, isn't it? It's artificial. It's not actually real, or I suppose what we might say embodied or personal intelligence, which is what Andy Crouch says in that book. We're going to do an episode on that soon anyway. So.
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose it was interesting because, one, it seems like technology rarely does actually replace people. We still need people for operation of the world, really, to make the world run and to use the machines and the technology that we have. But actually, that oftentimes there's been choices that have made that technology creates that further wealth inequality that drives down wages. And it's difficult because so much of the world seems to be about, hey, can we be more efficient? Can we be more economic? You know, and the businessification of the world, that everything should be run commercially. Even, you know, public sector places like the health sector and education is about, hey, how can we make this commercially viable? And it's like, well, in education, we're trying to grow a child to become a person. Does that match out on the bottom line ultimately? Like, is that what it's really ultimately about? And so, but yeah, where do you see this crossover into your life, and how does this help you make it count?
Great question. Take a step back. I think what you were just saying is really helpful, and it's important to center in on for a second. You know, some domains, or maybe lots of domains, aren't really best expressed or best analysed through a business frame. So, education. Is the student, you know, the customer? Is the student a customer, and the school or the higher education institute the business who provides that, the provider of that? You know, same with healthcare. Is healthcare a selling and a buying process where the patient is the customer? I'm not sure that gets us the best we're looking for. Yes, it gets some people inordinately rich, but it doesn't actually provide the flourishing we're looking for. Case in point, you know, some of America and the UK, some of the wealthiest nations that have ever existed, some of the most medicalized societies that have ever existed, and yet we wouldn't exactly say we're flourishing on the peak of human health. We are actually in a stack of crises all on top of one another, isn't it? And I say art is a great example, you know, and it's not surprising that we've seen this year, the writers' strikes and the actors' strikes, because this is in play. And at this point we can see a different road forward. We don't have to plough this road that the industrialists of the 18th and 19th century said technology replaces the skilled worker and basically makes everything cheap and brilliant. Well, actually not brilliant, just cheap for us. And it doesn't really matter that quality's not there. So I think for me, where it counts, or how I'm seeing this count, is I obviously want to stay apprised of some of these tools in my work as an engineer, but I also want to be thinking about and engaging with others who are interested in how can we make tech work for the flourishing of humans, and not just the increasing wealth gap and that incredible wealth producing capacity for an increasingly small number of people.
Yeah, and I suppose that I was thinking, you know, for me, something similar to that, but actually we all have a choice of whether we partake in that or not, about how we use technology intentionally or otherwise. And that, you know, maybe there are times when I'll now be aware of that choice more clearly. And hopefully I will choose, hey, maybe even if it's a bit more expensive, the most important thing here isn't about my pocket, whether I have money in the pocket necessarily, but actually if I can help personhood, really, and on that dignity of people and what maybe even causes I support.
I think for me, to touch on one more phrase from Andy Crouch's book, because I think it touches on this. So I've obviously been in pottery this year, taken a pottery class on the weekends, really enjoying it, and I'm starting to develop that craft a little bit. What I've seen is in the making of a few mugs that I've sent to a couple of friends, it takes a lot of time actually to do that. And do they come out exactly identical in perfect form? No. If you want to get perfect form, identical mugs, go to, you know, Wix or go to your local supermarket or whatever and just buy a set of mugs that are identical. They were made by a machine, and that's what you're going to get. But if you want something that is personal, then get something from a craftsman or a craftswoman. And the difference that Andy Crouch said in his book was there's a difference between personalized and personal. And so much of what we're seeing in today's markets is attempts to make things personalized. This is individualized for you, but it's still a mass market thing.
It's just got your name on it.
It's not mass produced, it's mass personalized. They've just made, and I think we want to make a step back to actually make it personal. Personal to you, and those are the things. And I love the idea of do I really need another cheap set of shoes, or cheap this or cheap that? I would rather pay higher quality, or pay for higher quality, knowing that money is also helping everyone down that chain. And of course that's complex. There's, you know, things about fair trade and Rainforest Alliance and everything. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but we can try. And if we try, we're sending a message with our lives.
Are you saying don't be another person with just another standard IKEA piece of artwork on your wall? No further comments. But that's it for today. Let us know what you think about this conversation. We'll put the article in the show notes. Have a read of that. It's about 6 to 8 minute read, depending on how quickly you read or how much time you want to mull on it. I found it really interesting. Hopefully we've helped make that a bit more practical for you in this working out.
And if you found this episode interesting, send it to someone who you think might also find it interesting.
That's all from us this week. Go make it count.